Okay, welcome to Presque Isle Audubon's program for November. And we're going to listen to Mary's presentation on how the piping plovers did this year at Presque Isle State Park. Mary is the lead shorebird monitor for the Erie Bird Observatory, and she's been monitoring shorebirds, particularly the plovers, since 2015. She's currently the program chair for Presque Isle Audubon, and she's been a member of Presque Isle Audubon for decades, and she's been on the board since 2005. She was in the past secretary and president, and now programs chair. She is a freelance writer and an artist, and she shares her home with husband Mike Plyler and their two tabby cats, and she's the proud Busha to two whip-smart granddaughters. Okay. All right, Mary.
And a third grandbaby on the way, I'm allowed to tell you now.
Okay.
They just announced it publicly. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm a little nervous. There's so many people here. As Sue pointed out, she told me that I was the lead shorebird monitor. And that is for the Erie Bird Observatory, co-founder. Tonight, I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about what Erie Bird Observatory does besides piping plovers and common terns, and also talk a little bit about the background of plovers in the Great Lakes and some of the past years at Presque Isle State Park before we get into 2021. And before I go to my slide set, I want to do a shout out to anybody here who is from Maumee Bay in Ohio. And I want you to say congratulations. And you guys did an excellent job. And welcome to the piping plover family. We are so happy to have another nesting site on Lake Erie. And it's just thrilling that one of our chicks from 2019, it was the one of the pioneers. And that was, I have forgotten her name, even though I named her. Let's go to the slideshow and maybe it'll come to me, or if anybody else remembers, speak up. Nellie, thank you. Nellie was named for the lighthouse keeper's youngest daughter, who was the first white person recorded to be born at Presque Isle State Park before it was a state park. And so it seemed like an appropriate name for another first. Now I'm going to go to my slides. Everybody should be muted for the most part. But I want to say that if people want to put a question in the chat box while I'm talking, we can always try to address it before the end of the program. Of course, I welcome questions at the end as well. All right. There we are. Can everybody see that?
It looks good, Mary. It looks good.
Thank you. Okay. This is the this was an exciting year at Gull Point, and I'm just going to launch right in to the Erie Bird Observatory and what we do. We were created in 2018 to continue the bird work that had been going on under the auspices of Audubon, Pennsylvania, but they decided to close the office in northwestern Pennsylvania, and myself and Sarah Sargent and Laura Marie Coich decided this work was too important, and we were going to form our own bird observatory to continue that work. We're dedicated to fostering enthusiasm for birds and conservation through ornithological research, public engagement. Hopefully tonight, we will be engaging you and in learning about piping plovers and having a interest in helping with the conservation of them. One of the things that we do is banding. There's a bird banding station at Fry's Landing at Presque Isle. Banding has occurred at Presque Isle since 1960, so it's a long history. It was not always it was not always Presque Isle, or it was not always Erie Bird Observatory that did it, obviously. We concentrate on migrating songbirds. My colleagues Sarah and Laura Marie are the two people who are engaged in that endeavor. We usually band in spring, almost always, and now we are frequently adding fall to the schedule, thankfully. Education and outreach, our banding station is open to the public when within COVID guidelines. And we also are hoping, well, we're starting to add new activities like bird walks for members and other things that will bring birds to people where they are. We also engage in marsh bird monitoring, primarily because least and American bitterns are state endangered birds. We have both of them at Presque Isle. The least bittern nests there. And so our water bird monitor, or excuse me, our marsh bird monitor, Chris Lundberg, who's on tonight, hi Chris, does his part by heading out into the marshes at Presque Isle and doing the counts during the nesting season. We also do water bird monitoring in the fall and spring as waterfowl and other water birds move through on migration. And that is the newest program we have, with the exception of a couple other things. And also at Presque Isle, of course, we do piping plover and common tern monitoring, as well as general shorebird monitoring. We do keep track of all the shorebirds that that occur at the park. Great Lakes piping plovers are federally endangered, which is one of the reasons that we have a mandate to do that. And terns are state endangered. So they are, you know, both of those birds are important. In terms of Gull Point, and I'll talk about Gull Point in a minute, it is the only habitat in Pennsylvania that is that can support both nesting piping plovers and common terns. So it's a very important place to the state. Talk a little bit about piping plover populations. There are three ranges. One is the Atlantic coast population on the right-hand side. The Great Plains population, North to South Dakota, Nebraska, and into Kansas, little pockets here and there. Both of those populations are considered or are listed as threatened federally. And the Great Lakes population in the middle is listed as federally endangered. There's approximately 8,000 piping plovers in the world. There last year in the Great Lakes population, there were 65 nesting pairs, and this year there were 72 nesting pairs. And that is actually, doesn't sound like a lot, but considering how they've improved since when they were listed, that's a pretty good improvement, but we've got a long ways to go. This is the historic range of the Great Lakes piping plover population. And you can see that they cover all five Great Lakes, including, you can see Ohio had 3 nesting locations, Erie, or Pennsylvania had 1 in Erie. There was a lot on the northern shore of in Ontario in Lake Erie, and none of those have yet to come back. And the primary populations are along the Michigan coast, but you can see that all of them at one time had had piping plover nests. This graph shows how the piping plovers fared since 1984 when they were listed as federally endangered. They had only 11 to 14 pairs were remaining in the wild. All of them were in Michigan. And the reasons for a decline in population in the early 20th century, it was primarily hunting. And then in the mid 20th century, it was increased beach usage, which is impossible to say, and shoreline development. And you can see that in 1987, they started using exclosures, and I will around the nests, and I will describe an exclosure later. And in 1992, captive rearing began. And you can see that in general, since all of those two activities took place, the population has decreased or increased, excuse me, has steadily increased with a few exceptions. 2011 was a really bad year. 2020 numbers were down primarily due to high water levels in the Great Lakes. So there was, this year we've gone up from the 65 pairs of last year to the 72 of this year. Back in 2016, before our story began, there were, the population has spread out, and they have started nesting in all 4 Great Lakes except for Lake Erie. And Lake Erie in 2016 was the only lake that did not have a nest. And there's Presque Isle. And so the nationwide piping plover recovery team was really rooting for Lake Erie to get a nest because they wanted all 5 Great Lakes to have a nest. And so our story kind of begins, if I could get my mouse to work. What's going on here? Oh, here we go. In 1992, the location, Gull Point, where the nesting has occurred and where it had nested in the past, where nesting had occurred in the past, became the area. Gull Point was closed, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Sorry. What formed to work on recovery in this area was a collaboration, the Common Piping Plover Common Tern Recovery Team. It consists of the Game Commission and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who both have management responsibilities for the species. The Department of Conservation and Natural Resources of Pennsylvania, they have jurisdiction over the park. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who are responsible for sand replenishment and other consultation. The Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and their Natural Heritage Program leads plant management at Gull Point in collaboration with DCR. And that's things like invasive species removal and other plant-based operations. What we do at EBO, and there's our logo and a little arrow, and there's me, is we are the boots on the ground. We are the eyes in the sky. We are the ones who go out and watch and record what's happening with the plovers and the terns, and then we report back to the rest of the team what we've seen. And that is a daily report that goes out during the season. Okay. For those of you, I realize that some of you might not know Presque Isle State Park like us locals do. Well, I thought you would like to see what it looks like. The park is a recurve sand spit that juts out into Lake Erie across the bay from the city of Erie, which is down below. The historical range, I'm sorry, my mouse is a little flaky. The designated critical habitat, and which is defined by the historic range of piping plover nesting, runs from the, which you can't see here, all the way out to Gull Point. Gull Point is the far tip of the lake, of the peninsula. And it is this area here that looks sandy is a natural area. April 15th, beginning of April until November, it is closed to the public with the exception of a trail that leads to an observation point. Now, this area changes every year. It has very dynamic profile based on the wind and currents that move sand from the west to the east, and also is affected by whether there's ice on the lake or not in the wintertime. And we'll go to the next one. It changes rapidly from year to year. These are drone images that the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy provided to us. This is 2018, that the profile or shape of Gull Point. This is 2019. So you can see that all of this area is gone and this area is more built up. And then no drones were flying in 2020. And here is 2021. And this is what Gull Point looked like in about March of this year. And obviously they flew their drone before all the foliage came out. It's in its winter mode. You can see that the area down here has really grown because of the waves and current action and moving sand down there. This little dot right here is my office, and it looks like this. And yes, there are often turkey vultures on the platform. It is, a trail runs to it. It's open to the public unless they close it for one reason or another. We had high water a few years and it was mostly impassable, except I still did it. It's a great spot to watch everything that's going on at Gull Point. There's some parts of the shoreline that we can't see, but in general, it is the place that we watch this from. And in 2016, one of the things that happened at Gull Point was this bird showed up on May 9th. Well, I think he showed up on the 8th, but I met him on the 9th. And he showed up with an older male plover, and they squabbled quite a bit and they fought, and then they both took off, which is something that's plovers have always done at Gull Point. They show up, they leave, and they're basically just passing through on migration. Well, this guy, besides after he left, he ended up coming back and stayed around for most of the summer. We nicknamed him Junior because he was the younger of the two plovers that arrived. And he was around most of the summer. And that gave us a hope that perhaps he really liked it there and he might come back, even though he never got a mate. And sure enough, on April 18th in 2017, he did come back. And he did find a mate. And history was made that year. And I'll show you, just briefly run through the history of 2016. Oh, no, before we do that, we have to talk about bands. The reason we knew it was the same bird was because they all get banded with unique color bands. And this is Jerry. He was named Junior. His name changed to Jerry in 2017 to honor Jerry McWilliams, the local naturalist and bird expert. And he was instrumental in getting Gull Point closed for the use of the birds. as opposed to boaters and swimmers and etc., beachgoers. The birds in the Great Lake population almost all get tagged in one way, shape, or form, or banded. And to learn or to understand how they're banded or why they're banded, I'll just run through every bird that's banded gets a metal band from the U.S. Geological Survey. Each one has a unique number on it. It is metal. It's when it's expressed in writing, it's X right there. Great Lakes population birds, if they're banded as an adult, we'll talk about chick banding later, gets an orange band with a little plastic flag that hangs out the back. That's orange flag, O with small f. And then each bird gets some unique combination of color bands so that they can be distinguished from other birds. So if we look at it, always read the bands from the left leg top down to the right leg top down. So orange flag is this guy, blue and yellow, his silver band X, and then O. I know that looks red, but it's actually orange. And that's how we write it. Now, this is sometimes why piping plovers get nicknames, because that's a mouthful if you're talking about a plover or a lot of plovers. Jerry and his mate, who was eventually nicknamed Jean, had their first egg on May 12th. We found their egg on May 23rd, and the nest was exclosed. Now, an exclosure does not keep the birds in, it allows to run back and forth, but it keeps out predators, ground predators, and aerial predators. But if what you're looking at right there is the first piping plover egg on Gull Point since the mid-1950s. So it's an amazing thing to be a part of. Now, of course, you won't. Okay. The chicks hatched on June 25th, and in case you can't see it, there's the adult and there's the chick. They're very tiny. And their plover chicks are purple, which means that within an hour or so after hatching, they're up, running, feeding themselves. They may not be running well, and they may fall over a lot. They're feeding themselves. Parent piping plovers never feed their chicks. They were banded on July 3rd and released back to this. The hands on the right-hand side are Jerry McWilliams' hands. They honored him by allowing him to release one of the birds. And I was equally honored to release one of the chicks. And those are my hands in the background. And that was a very spectacular day. In 2018, Jerry and his mate Jean return. They hatched 4 chicks, and all of those chicks fledged. So that was another spectacular year. 2019, a new generation steps up, and that is Blue Dot, who never got a nickname. Blue Dot was a chick that hatched at Gull Point 2017, the first year. And he came back to Gull Point in 2019, and actually Jerry as well. And they actually fought for the wing of the female that was there. Jean did not return. And instead of Dad, the more experienced plover winning the female, the son won the female. And even though he never got a mate, Jerry did stay at Gull Point that whole year, and actually was kind of like a surrogate parent to the chicks. And that was a very interesting year for that reason alone. Now, I was going to talk about chick banding. Each brood of chicks get identical bands, but they're distinguished by different things. On the if you look at this chick right here, that's dad, and that's one of the chicks. If you look here, you can see that it has an orange band on its bottom left leg, and it has an orange dot on it. And it has its geological survey silver band on the top. And then that is a black band, which you can't see very well. It would have a number on it. And all of the birds, all of the chicks that are banded at Gull Point have the same brood band. And so there's nothing on the top left. They have an orange band on the bottom left, and it has a dot color, which is either red, green, blue, or yellow. They have the silver band at top, and then the black band. Black is expressed L because B was already used for blue. And then it would have a unique number on it. So every bird that is banded at Gull Point can be identified. You can read the number and you can read the dot in conjunction with that. But every bird that no other birds in the Great Lakes population, no other chicks are banded the same way as the Erie birds. Everybody has their own unique combination. And I don't know if that makes sense, but if it doesn't, just say something to me and we'll talk about it. In 2020, the 2019 female came back, but Blue Dot did not. And so Jerry and her successfully also raised 4 chicks to fledge, which is, and that's one of their adorable chicks before it got banded. And the female was rebanded as an adult, and that's her banding. The nickname she got was Olive, for OLB. But it's still the same orange flag. She had nothing at the bottom left. She had her silver band, and she had black, and she had violet, which is a new color that's being used in the Great Lakes population. And there we are. That was last year. Everything was happy and beautiful. And then we get to 2021, which is still happy and beautiful, but it was filled with a lot of drama. And I was writing movie scripts to go along with this season. Jerry returns and decides that he's going to take Gull Point by storm, that he owns the place and nobody else can nest there. And every female there belongs to him. And we called it his midlife crisis. We also had some names for him like Casanova, others not quite so complimentary. But as always, the season started on April 15th. It was cold, and it was wet, it was brown. He arrived 2 days later. By May 6th, we have a potential nest site with a new female to the point, whose nickname is Little Bob for the EOB in her banding combo. And they are courting and about to, or it looks like they're going to create a nest. But the female, the Olive, returns as well. And squabbling ensued between the female, those 2 females, and sometimes even a third female got in the act, and they were all fighting over Jerry. Now, I could have cropped this image, but I didn't. I decided to show you that this is how I see the plovers from the observation platform most of the time, through the scope. And if I'm trying to take a picture, I've got to put my iPhone up on the lens and try to get a shot. And typically what happens is, I see these birds, and you can see a plover right here. See the birds, they appear to be courting, they appear to be scraping in certain places. I will take you through my scope. I will mark where the scrape is, And that is what I send back to the recovery team so that they can follow along and get the information they need to make management decisions. But while Jerry is making his first nest with little Bob, he starts courting another female who never got a nickname. We called her OXL. And they start courting and creating a new nest. So here is another shot through the scope. And you can see I'm not very good at that sometimes. And they're already starting another new nest. We're starting to talk about Jerry and his midlife crisis and his Casanova way. And what the heck is he thinking? You know, why is this going on? But as much fun as we were having with it, it's actually serious business. Male and female plovers take turns incubating the eggs and tending young chicks. And it's important for both of them to be on duty. It takes two dedicated plovers to do this. With Jerry dividing his attention between two mates and two scrapes, the eggs have less of a chance of developing appropriately. The female has to spend more time away from has to spend more time incubating, but inevitably has to spend time away from the nest so that she can forage and, stay alive. And so if he's being inattentive, the eggs are at risk, the future chicks are at risk. And so at some point, by May 21st, unfortunately, nest 1 is abandoned and the eggs are removed. They are taken to an incubator at the Detroit Zoo. And then from there, in hopes that they will hatch and move on to a captive rearing facility in Michigan. Unfortunately, these eggs make it. So now we have nest 2. And nest 2 seems to be going pretty well, but another female arrives, and I called her XLOL, and he starts courting her. And they create a third nest in yet another part of Gold Point. And it is, the same scenario repeated, where he has to spend time between two different nests and is not dedicating the incubation time that he should be. And nest 2 still has 4 eggs, but because he is not as attentive as he should be, the Game Commission and Fish and Wildlife made the decision to candle the eggs, which is essentially illuminating them to check on the status of the embryos. Everything, this is a stock image, this is not the actual candling. Everything seemed okay, but unfortunately, on June 13th, a possum breached the enclosure and took the eggs. And so nest 2 was now gone. And we stopped nest 3. And nest 3 is the only active nest. And Jerry and XLOL settled down to incubation duties, but not for long. Because guess who comes back? Little Bob, the female from the first nest. And she actually was like tempting Jerry away. I saw her do it several times. And guess what she and Jerry do? They create a 4th nest. And this is unprecedented. There's been extra pair bonding in other piping plover populations, but I don't think four nests with the same male has ever happened. So now, once again, Jerry is dividing his time between nest 3 and nest 4, and he's actually doing a fairly admirable job of it. He is, religiously going back and forth between the 2 nests. But then a very happy thing occurred, and that changed the dynamic. After months of watching nests, hoping for chicks, nest 3 finally hatches. 3 of the 4 eggs hatched on July 8th and July 9th. In case you can't see it, there's one of the chicks. This is a highly cropped image, and so it's a really blurry. And while chicks hatching is always a very happy and exciting time, this changes Jerry's disposition towards nest 4, and he's increasingly spending less time at nest 4. And eventually, little Bob, despite her very stoic effort and long incubations and brief foraging forays, she eventually abandons that nest, like she abandoned the first nest. And these eggs, because it's too late in the season, they're collected, and they went to support a research effort on egg development. And that's the end of nest 4. So now we have 3 chicks running around. The 4th egg in nest 3 never hatched, and that too was taken to research. We lose one of the chicks to depredation. We don't know when it occurred. It was last seen on July 22nd. After that, we only had 2 chicks that were viable, or that were, visible. And the female from nest 3 departs around July 25th. Now, this is very typical piping plover behavior. The male and female as a pair work equally to incubate the eggs, but then after the chicks are hatched and they're kind of 7 or 10 days old, the female will start hanging around elsewhere and leaving the chick tending to dad. And dad, the male, is the one who pretty much keeps tab on the chicks the longest. She leaves July 25th, and our 2 chicks are left with Jerry, who departs on August 20th. So that's almost a month later, and he stays with the chicks. And the chicks themselves stay until August 28th. And the bird up on the top left gets nicknamed Red Dot because you can see our banding combination with the orange on the left, and he has a red dot and a black on the bottom right. And it is and you can see that the other one was not banded. And the reason he was not, or she was not banded, was because I'm sorry. Come on, Nest. On the wrong way. Okay, was because he evaded capture by the Game Commission when they came to ban them. And all 3 chicks were banded, but then of course we lost one. And this guy they were never able to recapture him and ban him. So he just is going to have no bans until he might get captured as an adult and get banded as an adult, which makes for an interesting scenario because a Great Lakes piping plover running around without bands on leads to all kinds of questions and dilemmas as to where he is and what he's doing, because it's nearly impossible. It's impossible to distinguish them from each other. Now, this bird was named by the bander, Kathy Hafner from the Game Commission, as Houdini. And he certainly, or she certainly, lives up to that name. It's a spunky little bird, and it seems to have a lot of moxie. And I'm hoping it does well in life. We're all rooting for it because it was, not that we don't love Red Dot too, but that is, it was a special bird. I had a special relationship with him. The chicks stay until August 28th, which is the latest season we've ever had. The rules of our contract are that we have to monitor for 3 days after, or 3 days without seeing piping plovers, and then our season's over. So our season actually officially ended on September 1st, which is the longest season we've ever had. This was a late nest, obviously, after we went through the first two. And so it made it made for a lot of long walks out to Gull Point and a lot of effort. And towards the end, Sarah Sargent and Jerry McWilliams actually kind of pitched in, helped, because I was getting a little tired. Now, to keep track of everything, we created a spreadsheet. And I don't expect you to be able to read this spreadsheet. I just wanted to give you a sense of the enormity of the detail with which we had to keep track in terms of behavior and the days that they were there and what they were doing, when full incubation started, and when the nests were exclosed, and when the eggs were collected, if they were collected, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wanted to give you a brief taste of what, here's some detail from that. It starts on June 16th through the 16th of July. And it's actually behind something, so I can't really see what that says. But this is Jerry, his band combo up here. This is Little Bob, the bird from the first nest, and the female from the first nest, and the female of the fourth nest. And you can see in this area here where Jerry is incubating at nest 3, and he's incubating and doing a broken wing display at nest 4. So this is the key that we developed to talk about the different behaviors that was going on. And these are all the tilt display, display flight, scraping, copulation, sitting in the scrape, pebble tossing, goose stepping, broken wing display. Well, not broken wing display. Those are all courtship activities. And the broken wing display is used, and it's just like a kilder broken wing, where they put out their wing and pretend it's broken and make noise and say, oh, look at me, I'm broken and broken, and they lead the predator away from the nest or the chicks. So we had to break that down into smaller things so that we fit it all in there. And then you can see here that he's incubating really nicely at both nests. And then here's July 8th and 9th, and BR is brooding. He's already brooding the chicks, the brand new hatch chicks. And then he stops visiting and incubating at nest 4, because he starts putting his attention to the chicks, which is something that his instinct tells him to do, and it makes sense. So, and then this is also from the spreadsheet. I actually just did it for my own benefit, because I was having a hard time keeping track of the band combos of all the different females, because many of them, as you can see, have orange and black, and orange and black, and orange and black. And so it was easier for me to just like keep this off to the side while I was working on the spreadsheet. The season results, we had 14 eggs produced in 4 nests, and only 2 chicks fledged. And this, by the way, is Houdini, a cropped, heavily cropped image of him. And I think he kind of sums up the season. I think that, despite the fact that we had so many thrills and chills and oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this again moments. He still persevered, and at least 2 chicks were fledged, and he's stepping into the future. We have Presque Isle Gull Point has now contributed 18 chicks to the overall Gull Point population, and we're darn proud of that. And we're of course looking forward to 2022 and hopefully 2 nests and 8 birds and all sorts of wonderfulness. I'm hoping Jerry gets over his midlife crisis and settles down with 1 girl next year. That would be very nice. I'll take your questions. If you're looking for us, it's eriebirdobservatory.org. All our handles at Instagram and Twitter, and we have 3 different Facebook pages. The Presque Isle Piping Plover monitoring page. The name is going to be changing. We're going to make it a little more Gull Point focused as opposed to just piping plovers, so that we can legitimately talk about lots of other things that are going on at Gull Point, not even just birds, turtles, and all kinds of things, because it's just such a fascinating place, and it's worth sharing a lot of information about. So thank you very much, and I will take your questions.
Well, Mary, we got a couple from the chat. I'll start back at the first.
Okay, yeah, please.
A lot of nice comments. Okay, the first question is Jerry's behavior typical or usual for a piping plover? And that was in reference to this last season.
As I said, his creation of 4 nests with 3 different females is very unique. There have been extra pair bondings, mating in other piping plover populations, but to the best of my knowledge, now I don't have access to all the information, that this was a remarkable occurrence within this population.
Okay. And we have a couple questions about pebble tossing and goose stepping. What do they mean?
Okay, pebble tossing. When the birds, from the time the way courtship occurs, the male will do a display flight they fly in a particular way with their wings tipped back and forth, and they sing a particular call, and they fly like in circle 8s over the female. And then at some point, the male will come down and start scraping in the sand and creating little hollows that at some point will be a nest. And the male will create several of them. And one of the activities that both the male and the female do is called pebble tossing, where they'll be outside of that scrape and they will pick up a pebble with their beak or a piece of shell or something else and toss it back into the scrape. So eventually the scrape, the nest, has like a lining of small rocks or shells and pieces of things. Now the male creates more than one nest or more than one scrape, but the female decides which one she's going to want to lay her eggs in, and then the other scrapes just disappear. They just get blown away or whatever. But they continue to do the pebble tossing after, during courtship and even during incubation, and sometimes even, like up until right before hatch. It's just kind of something they do that is part of the whole mate bonding thing. Goose stepping, and I wish I had a picture of it because it's actually kind of hilarious. But right before copulation, the bird, the male, will do something called a tilt display. And that's where he kind of spreads out his wings and puts his head down towards the ground and lifts his tail up. And the female will go and sit underneath him. And then if she seems receptive, he will start goose stepping. It's sometimes also called tattooing. And he will stand up really, really tall and start doing this with his feet on the ground. And he'll do that until she's ready, and he'll hop on her and they'll copulate. And so that is something that's done right before. You can Google piping plover goose stepping, and I'm sure you'll find lots of videos out there that will show you exactly how that happens.
Another question, did any males show up during the season? That's this season.
Yes, and Jerry chased them all away.
All right. Any idea what the carrying capacity of Gull Point is for piping plovers?
The carrying capacity, like how many nests?
I think that's what they might mean. I'm not sure if it's from a Jay Hill. If Jay Hill wanted to unmute and further explain their question.
Is that Jamie Hill?
Yeah, hi, Mary. Enjoyed your
Hi.
talk. How
Thank
many,
you.
yeah, what's the carrying capacity? How many pairs maximum do you think could breed in the number of acres you have out there?
You
You
know,
didn't have a Jerry that's very, territorial.
yeah. Well, yes. And, in the first season, we actually did have 2 nests, which I didn't touch on. So in his younger years, he allowed another male and another female to have a nest. It's a really hard question to ask. I'm guessing because all the birds are different, and without Jerry being territorial like that, at least 2. But I think that we've got enough room for maybe 3 or 4. But that's a layman's guess. I am not a scientist.
People are interested in knowing where the Presque Isle plovers have been spotted during the winter, especially this year.
We've already had one recited. A lot of our birds are seen on the Gulf Coast of Florida, but Great Lakes piping plovers in general can winter on the Texas coast, on the Atlantic coast, and some of them even show up in the Bahamas. Those are mostly Atlantic coast birds, but I did see 2 Great Lakes piping plovers in the Bahamas when we did a winter survey.
Okay. Who had the nest in 2020? Because they had 2 of the plovers from Presque Isle this year at Maumee Bay, Nellie and Birdie.
What do you mean, who had the nest? It was Jerry, our pioneer bird, who's now 6, will be 7 when he comes back in 22, if he comes back. And the bird called Olive.
Okay.
That's what you meant.
This is a good comment. Jerry is doing his best to save the species all by himself.
Well, you would think so, but his behavior actually put those eggs in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And, and that's the downside of all this fun we're having with all my plovers and soap opera and drama and shaking our head over his behavior. He's kind of wasting resources, shall we say.
Next question. Given the annual changes at Gull Point, like the shifting sand and the high water, is there a concern for the future of the nesting habitat at Gull Point?
It's stable enough that I think good habitat will remain. If the high water levels of the past few years are any indication, there was still plenty of habitat despite the high water. You know, I certainly can't predict if we don't have ice on the lake this winter. Things could change drastically. But it does. Gull Point does receive a deposit of sand because a lot of the sand that they use to replenish the farther west eventually get washed down there. And of course, there's also invasive species and plant work that's monitored and cared for by DCNR and the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. So they're monitoring things from the plant point of view. I don't think anybody has a crystal ball on that one. You know, I mean, so many things change, and we can only hope. One of the things, the real interesting things that I wanted to share that I didn't, for those of you who knew Jean Stull, she was kind of my mentor, and I learned a couple of years ago from another friend of hers that Jean, despite all the hard work she did to close Gull Point and work with birds and ban the birds, she actually never believed that that we would see piping plovers nesting there. And when I found that out, I now carry her with me in my heart every day to Gull Point, so that she knows that that dream came true. And I am really to be a part of that. Anyway, go on.
That's a very wonderful sentiment for those of us who knew Jean, and how you're keeping her in your heart. That's nice to hear. Another question is, do other sites in the Great Lakes have multiple pairs?
Oh, yes, many do. The more established areas in Michigan, around Sleeping Bear Dunes and the Manitou Islands, have, you know, multiple nests, you know, and they work out their territories. And I think that Jerry just got spoiled that he hasn't had anybody to really compete with. But in other places they do compete.
Well, I have a question. It's not like Gull Point is that small that Jerry had to feel he had to chase every other male off. True that there was plenty of room for, so yeah.
We would think so.
Yeah.
And if you read the piping plover manual, you that would be your expected, but you know, the birds don't read the piping plover manual. And it's like he got totally jacked up on hormones this year. We really can't ever be able to interpret what he was thinking.
Oh, let's see. Have modifications been made to the enclosures to make them more opossum proof?
Yes. Well, not because of our experience, but because of predation in other parts of the in the other parts of the Great Lakes. What they started just this year, they started being a stronger, like part of the bottom of the enclosure actually goes into the sand. But we had some instances, I think it was a mink in Chicago, that took the Money and Rose's nest, the first one. And they're talking about having a shield that goes down under the sand that extends from the bottom of the exclosure, that will prevent animals from digging down under the exclosure and coming up into the inside.
That's a great idea. Well, it's like sort of having a garden. If you live out in the country, you can't just put the fence in just a little bit, because they'll all dig underground and come up on the other side of the fence. Yeah. Here's a comment from Nancy Bogart. She said at Sleeping Bear Dunes this past June, she saw 6 separate enclosures at Glen Haven, Michigan, and all of them were within 100 feet of each other, and some of them even closer.
Hi, Nancy. It's so nice to see you. Oh, I don't see you. But we're friends on Facebook. I've never met her in real life. And yeah, I mean, many plover pairs share their resources, the bees, the habitat with other plover pairs. Why Jerry thinks he needed to chase everybody away this year, we don't know. And and I want to put a little bit of blame onto the females, because little Bob, of course, by the time she abandoned her first nest, she was probably too late to find a mate somewhere else, and she obviously still had some hormones left too, and she was I actually saw her go to the exclosure at nest 3 while the female from that exclosure was gone and just sitting on the nest. And she was like tempting him to come out and go have fun. So, everybody was playing a part here. But it was just kind of crazy.
I think that's it for questions, unless anybody wants to add something to the chat or unmute yourself and speak directly to Mary. Let's see, one more comment. Smithsonian banded house wrens in my Maryland neighborhood, and I saw similar male aggression, double nests, and neglect of one.
Yeah, well, a lot of males will compete with each other in territory. I mean, that's just pretty much standard in the bird world.
Here's a comment from Sherry, must be from down south. Thank you for the presentation. And she has recited Red Dot twice, October 4th and October 22nd at the same Southwest Florida beach. And I'm a bit, yeah, I'm a
Hi,
bit.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Hello, Mary.
You've seen him twice now, or?
I have.
Nice.
And probably hanging in the same 100-yard spot that I seen him the first time.
Did you happen to find the unbanded plover Houdini?
No, I'm keeping watch though. I've seen quite a few unbanded ones and hope to get over there this weekend. So
yeah, that's what, I mean, he does have a little bit of a feather issue going on there with his head. At least he did back in August. We're hoping that might help identify him, somewhere.
yeah, I'll keep my eyes open.
Thank you for joining us tonight. That's so nice.
Oh, I love seeing where they come from. So thank you very much. And the topography maps from up there in Erie were fantastic.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I realized, a lot of people might be coming from somewhere else to watch this. And I thought, they don't have a clue what Presque
No.
Park looks like.
It's the same. We see them in their winter, plumage, and it's so different to see pictures up north when they're in their breeding colors. I'm jealous.
Oh, well. Yeah, and we get the chicks too.
Yes.
Because the chicks are like really awesome.
Yeah. I have snow clovers down here, so I do a trade-off.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. How about Wilson's?
Yes, we have Wilsons on the island as well.
They're very rare here.
Yes.
I've actually seen 2 Gold Point, and the first one was such a rarity that like people from all over the state came to see it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We have quite a few colonies of skimmers down here too, which is very interesting, and they're cute little babies.
I bet. I think all the shorebird birds are like really cute. The chicks.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you. It was a lot of great information.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Let's see, you're getting a lot of comments. I hope you get a chance to look through the chat afterwards, Mayor. A lot of people thanked you for your presentation. Yeah. Anything else from anybody? More things are piping up here. Okay.
Yeah, I can read the chat now. I'm kind of watching.
Okay.
So yeah, but I haven't had a chance to like look at everything. Um, Liz McQuaid, are you here? Well,
Yes, dear, I'm here.
okay. Just if some people came in late at the beginning of the program, I sent a big shout out and congratulations to all the piping plover monitors, the volunteers at Maumee Bay State Park. You guys did a fabulous job, and we're so excited to have you in the piping plover family, and are excited for you this year as much as we're excited for our season. And it's just going to be nice having neighbors that we can exchange stuff with.
We've actually had another beach in Ohio that closed a section for hopeful piping plover nesting
Yeah.
at Menor Headlands.
Menor Headlands, yes.
Yeah.
Sarah Sargent actually went and did a presentation for the Audubon group there right before it was announced that it was being closed. Yeah, they're working real hard. ODNR is working really hard to make that place accommodating, and that's one of the historical sites. So we're hopeful for that as well. We're very hopeful. I mean, it'd be so nice if we had a little southern tier exchange, when what we really would also like to see is the North Shore of Lake Erie start to become populated. Long Point, some places along there that have a lot of nesting. I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's some places where they will never nest again because of development, but at least at Long Point, it would be great to have a nesting pair or two or four or whatever capacity they have. It's a much bigger peninsula than ours.
Mary, do you know, is there any active monitoring going on at Long Point to check for plovers?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Yeah, the Long Point Bird Observatory is active there. Team B. Anything else?
Hi, Mary. This is Ruth.
Oh, hi, Ruth.
What was a wonderful presentation. I enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah, the crazy birds and all your hard work. And I look forward to walking out and back with you again next year.
That would be lovely. I always enjoy the company. It's kind of a lonely job sometimes, especially when it rains.
Yeah.
Are you wearing your Clover Ring, Mary?
Yes, I am. I'm wearing my Clover Ring. I don't know if I can show you. It's hard to get into focus. It was made for me by a friend of mine, Michelle Franz, and it copies the U.S. Geological Survey number that is on the bird that's on Jerry's ankle, that's on Jerry's leg. And she made it for me in 2018. And I wear it every day in my season. And I always have to be a little careful because I don't want my husband to think I'm married to that bird, but I kind of am. And yes, I am prepared for him to not come back someday.
So you mean you're prepared for your husband not to come back?
No, Jerry, the plover.
So the question
Thank you for allowing me to clarify that, Chris.
So when Mike goes out to Presque Isle, Does Jerry dive bomb him and try to chase him off?
No, but there have been comments about my relationship with Jerry Clover. Saying that, like, in 2016, he kept coming back because he liked me, not just Gull Point. And then when he came back in 2017, we were like, uh-oh. But he has never courted me, so I think I'm safe.
There is a question about recording of this program, and it is of course recorded, and generally it takes me a half a day or so to get it uploaded to our YouTube channel. So